Welcome back, folks, to part 3 on our cardiovascular system unit. In this one, we're going to take a quick look at the different types of blood vessels, as along with how they kind of exchange the gases, and then some of the more important individual vessels. So let's start off with just talking about categories of vessels. We have 3 main categories: arteries, veins, and capillaries. And these vessels are just tubes through which blood flows to and from the cells of the body. Keeps the blood in these things where it's supposed to go. Otherwise, you'd just be a bag of blood. It could be kind of gross, and it wouldn't circulate efficiently either.
It's like a sponge saturated ultra, yeah.
So there are 3 main types of blood vessels, like we said. Arteries start with letter A, and the way I always remember what these do is they carry blood away from the heart. Arteries away. So in the systemic circuit, where the blood's going to the body and then back to the heart, arteries are what's carrying the blood away from the heart and down to the body, like the aorta and some of those things are big arteries. And then veins carry blood back to the heart, and these are labeled as blue because in the systemic circuit, they'll be carrying deoxygenated blood. Question for you, though, are arteries always carrying oxygenated blood and veins always carrying deoxygenated blood?
There's a special circumstance where that is not the case, which is one of the tricks with the coloring convention. In general, we want you will generally remember arteries as red, veins as blue, but in that pulmonary circuit, their roles are reversed.
Yeah, because think about it, when the right ventricle contracts, it's pushing blood up to the lungs. Well, the blood it's pushing is deoxygenated, right? But it's going away from the heart, so it's an artery. And there is a distinction in the structure of arteries versus veins. Arteries, since they have a lot of pressure behind them, because the heart is pumping right into them, they're much thicker and have thicker walls, and they're actually a little bit smaller in diameter than veins, but they have thicker walls, and that's the structural difference between them. That's why they carry blood away from the heart. Veins are thinner because they're at relatively low pressure. Okay, the blood has gone all the way down to the body and coming back, and it's under a lower pressure, so it doesn't need to be as tough. The last one there, guys, capillaries, is really important for the next slide, because capillaries are extremely small blood vessels. And these vessels are literally only one thin, flat cell thick walls. It's not multiple layers with muscles and everything. It's just one cell layer thick vessels. Oftentimes, they're just big enough for single blood cells to move through, and not much bigger than that. And because they're so thin, it makes it really easy for diffusion and osmosis to occur. Okay, the materials don't have to pass through any more cells than they need to, and they can get in and out of the cells pretty easy. So those are capillaries. That's where gas exchange happens. So blood leaves the heart, goes through arteries down to the tissues in the body. In the tissues, we've got all those capillaries, which is where all the exchanging of materials takes place, and it comes back to the heart in veins. Or if we're going to the pulmonary circuit through the lungs, arteries to the lungs, then we have capillaries in the lungs, and then back to the heart and the veins. All right.
So on to that on that point, we just wrapped up a unit on diffusion, osmosis, cell transport. And we want to make sure that we remember that as we're going through this setup here, because for oxygen, carbon dioxide exchange in particular, our body's relying on diffusion in order to carry out that process. Now, we can generalize. This goes for all of the things that your cells need. The capillaries, like Mr. Hamele said, are where the exchange happens. So glucose, that's being carried from your blood to your cells to deliver that energy, picking up other waste products. Some of those things need different types of transport, whether it's facilitated or active. But for the gas exchange here, oxygen, carbon dioxide, some simple diffusion will do the trick because of concentration gradients. And I'm thinking that this is the slide for that. So capillaries in the lungs are where your blood is going to pick up oxygen. When you breathe in a breath of fresh air, there's lots of oxygen in that air, very little oxygen in your blood because your body has used it all. So as the blood flows through the capillaries in the lungs, oxygen is going to diffuse from high concentration in the air in your lungs into the low area of concentration, which is your blood. Carbon dioxide does the opposite. The blood in your capillaries in your lungs has lots of carbon dioxide. The air in your lungs has relatively little, so it's going to go from high to low again. But this way, but for carbon dioxide, it's going from the blood into the air, and then you breathe it out. You breathe in, and you reset the concentration gradient. The flip-flop happens when it comes to your body tissues. So let's say for a muscle, we'll zoom in on this here. So here is an artery coming in on the left side. It's branching into those tiny capillaries, and then those capillaries are kind of coming back together to form the venules and the veins that would then go back to the heart for in the systemic circuit. So the oxygen-rich blood, high concentration, low CO2 concentration, comes into a body tissue, and you can see the cells up above, their little nuclei up there. Each of those cells, remember, needs energy, and the process for producing that energy is cellular respiration. It uses glucose and oxygen, and it produces carbon dioxide, water, and the ATP energy. So the oxygen is in high concentration in the blood, low concentration in the cells because they're using it, and so it will diffuse from high to low from the blood to the cells. The flip-flop is true for carbon dioxide. The cells have lots of carbon dioxide because they're creating it, and the blood has relatively little. So it diffuses from the cells into the blood, and then that blood gets carried back to the heart, back to the lungs, where the concentration gradient is reversed, and so you get rid of the carbon dioxide that way. Other things to add, I don't know how much detail we want to go in on that there. That it's really cool. I just want to point this out. We're talking about characteristics of living things from our first unit. We're talking about cell energy, cellular respiration again. We're talking about cell transport and body systems. All of this stuff is working together here, which is very cool.
All right, so now that we kind of understand how these blood vessels are working and working together, here's some of the important ones that you may have heard of before. So our first one here, the aorta, is the main artery coming from your heart. And so this is kind of that really big arcing one we'll see on the next slide, kind of a diagram of the heart there, or Mr. Hamele's got his heart model and we'll gesture to the aorta. And so this is the artery that's delivering oxygenated blood to the cells, right? We have it color-coded in red to indicate we've got oxygen. So this is where all that blood that we're pumping out to the rest of your body, it's going through the aorta. On the kind of flip side then, we have the pulmonary artery. Again, pulmonary has to do with the lungs. So this is going to be the artery that's carrying blood from your heart to the lungs to pick up that oxygen and get rid of the CO2. Again, this one's in blue, even though it's an artery, because it's going away from your heart to your lungs, but it's carrying that deoxygenated blood. Our veins, then, we have the pulmonary vein. So again, having to do with the lung. This is going to be the vein that's bringing the oxygenated blood back to your heart. And finally, the vena cava is the vein that is bringing all that deoxygenated blood back to your heart from the body. So these are kind of the main four blood vessels coming off of your heart that are pumping the blood away from your heart and then bringing the blood back into the heart. And so here's our diagram. So remember, we have the aorta, that top kind of artery in red at the top, pumping that oxygenated blood out. We have kind of within that the pulmonary artery. Again, that's pumping blood away to your lungs. So those are our two arteries pumping away from the heart. And then we have the pulmonary veins in kind of orange in the back there. And we have the vena cava, which is sometimes divided into the superior and inferior, kind of the top and the bottom. And so those are our veins that are bringing the blood back to our heart. And so you can see kind of how this all connects then to all the different parts of your body. As you're kind of moving the blood through your body, you're going to have all sorts of smaller blood vessels then kind of branching off into different areas as you're moving to the different areas of your body.
Kind of like plumbing in your house. You've got a big water main comes in and it branches to serve all of the various things, your faucets, your sinks, your shower, your washing machine, whatever else. And then all of the drains in your house are kind of like the veins. They're collecting everything up, and it again, it goes from these smaller tubes, the pipes, and then into a larger pipe that then is kind of the waste that's carried away from your house.
and then we recycle all that water and drink it, right?
Oh yeah.
So that's what happens in the cardiovascular system. It keeps on getting recycled.
If you have a filtration system built into your house, of course. Yeah.
Say we have a well and a septic tank, so kinda.
Yeah.
And finally, we said all cells need to get those nutrients and get rid of waste, and this includes the heart as well, right? Your heart is still made of cells, so we do have coronary arteries, which are going to supply the heart muscles with blood, right? So it's a little bit weird that the heart's pumping blood to itself, but again, every single cell in your body needs those nutrients and needs to get rid of waste. So you'll see kind of all the different, almost just kind of, I don't know how to describe them. Yeah, little tiny branches again, running across kind of the surface of your heart muscles to provide them with the nutrients that they need. And I believe that's it for this video. So we've got one more. Next time we'll be checking out cardiovascular health, and so how this really relates to all of you and potentially some of the issues that you can run into with your cardiovascular system. We'll see you next time.